Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here this morning at the invitation of Rabbi Strauss. I thank you for that invitation. When I was a boy, 6, 7, 8 years old, long before we had that special day in the business world where parents were invited to bring their children to the office, my father did that with me. Many Saturday mornings, when I was very young, he would bring me to his office and allow me for the next 3 or 4 hours to type on all of the secretary's typewriters. He allowed me to add up numbers on the accounting office's calculators. And at the end of my 3-hour stay, which was extraordinary fun, he would give me a comic book to read while he went around the office and cleaned up everything I had done. And then I was invited after the delightful morning to go out to a lovely lunch with my dad at the L&C cafeteria, which some of you may remember from many years ago. I had a sense of deja vu when Rabbi Strauss called and invited me to do the sermon today. And I realized why he invited me, because today, I think, is Bring a Retired Rabbi to Work Day. And to top it off, he told me that I'm going to get a real good lunch today. Thanks to the Bailiff family. But I have another memory from when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And this is a memory that I have from being in school. And I remember one day I was out on the playground during recess, and I found a half-dead bird on the ground. And I decided, being a young kid, that I would grab that bird and bring it into the classroom to share with my teacher and all my classmates. And I remember how many years later what the teacher said to me, "David, don't you ever do such a thing again. Get that bird out on the playground where you found it, or else I'm going to put this on your permanent record." Now, does anybody else have a recollection of the permanent record? Well, I do. And I remember many times, if I didn't get a good grade, if something happened in the classroom, if I accidentally punched somebody, the teacher would come to me and say, "This is going to go on your permanent record." And I have to tell you, that meant a lot in those days, because I didn't know what the permanent record was, but we all had one. I suspected that somewhere there was a filing cabinet, probably in the principal's office, where we had a folder. It said David Rosen, and it had all the little things that I had ever done. And I suspected as well that it followed me wherever I went. In fact, I worried about that when I was a senior in high school. And when I filed my application to the University of Texas, they asked for the name of my high school and the principal and 2 teachers that they could call. And I thought, well, how are these teachers going to remember me, and what are they going to say about me? And then, of course, I realized they would get a copy of my permanent record. Now, as I grew older, of course, permanent record sounded silly. There must have been some file on me. I'm sure they had to send grades to the university. But nonetheless, I outgrew that notion. But the reality is that today, permanent records are real. There's no doubt about the validity of that very notion. Because the truth of the matter is, today we leave permanent records and things for our permanent record wherever we go. Whatever we write on Facebook is permanent, and it is forever. It is almost impossible to get rid of something you wrote, some posting you left on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media. Even if you die, and we will, your Facebook account still holds that record, and trying to close a Facebook account is very hard. And even if you close it, the data still remains somewhere in the Facebook world. We leave records wherever we go, and we learn something else, that thanks to all the wonderful security cameras that are all over our community and country, we're always being recorded. One of my wife's pleasures and mine is we enjoy watching British mysteries like Broadchurch, Shetland. There's so many others. They take place in exotic countries all over Europe, in England, in Sweden, Norway, France, Italy. We love the scenery in which these murders take place and are solved. Such a beautiful lake on which they found that body. But here's the scary part of it, that in all of these countries, it seems like all over Europe, not so much in the United States yet, but we're getting there. When they're looking for the behavior, the location of a potential suspect, they often can go to the cameras. They can find you, and then they can follow you. They can follow you as you walk from one street to another, or as you walked from one street to another 4 nights ago, 5 nights ago, a store you walked in. This is real time. This is happening today. And those recordings, that security is forever, because it may be needed for the solving of some crime. There's so many different ways in which our steps are followed. Sometimes it's harmless, sometimes it's embarrassing. Like the woman who went to a wedding, and they were recording all kinds of things in the wedding. And as she was coming down the steps, she tripped and fell. And so as the video is being shown of the beautiful recessional of the wedding, everybody who watched the video, everybody who got a copy of the video, everybody who will ever watch the video for the rest of everybody's lives will see the mother of the bride falling down the steps. And there's no way to take it back. There's no way to get it back. It's forever. Was it harmful? Maybe not. Is it embarrassing? Very. But today, permanent records are being written by us everywhere we go. Many of you have seen a show on Netflix called Black Mirror. Black Mirror is like a Twilight Zone for the 21st century. It's about what technology will become, not way in the future, but just a few years from now. And one of the episodes was particularly appropriate for this subject because Black Mirror envisions a time when we will record everything we see and do. There'll be a little chip built behind our ear, which will allow everything we do to be recorded and kept and searched and indexed. And it's just a small step from where technology is today. Instead of turning on your phone when you want to record something, you'll be able just to automatically record it. It'll be so neat. It'll be so cool. The permanent record is a factor in all of our lives. And of course, that is a subject that really resonates with us on Yom Kippur. We talk about the permanent record, the book of life, by which God will see our actions and make decisions about our fate. Who will live and who will die? Who by water, who by fire? We can take it literally, or we can take it to understand something deeper than what the words themselves say. Because there is another set of words that we read right through and often don't acknowledge. That the permanent record by which God will judge us is a record that Bechotem Yad, it's written by our own hand. We are the ones who write that book by which God will judge us. It's not just God looking at us, it's God reading what we have written. The things we have done, the behavior that we have manifested and exhibited, these are the things that ultimately are the words by which we are judged. I understand the meaning of Bechotem Yad to be that, yes, we are constantly being judged, we're constantly being watched, and we are constantly being recorded, but in a very different way than we sometimes imagine. We're being judged and recorded every time we open our mouths to our spouses and to our children and to people we know and love and with whom we work. By the way we talk to people, by the way we interact with people, by the deeds we do, by the ability we have or don't have to support wonderful philanthropic proposals that come to us, by all the ways in which we treat our children, the memories we leave, that's all part of the permanent record that we write ourselves. One of the interesting things and sometimes painful things that I observe, and Rabbi Strauss and Rabbi Siegel, we've all had this experience. We go into a house where someone has died and we speak with the family. Most of the time, the families tell us wonderful things about the deceased. He was a loving father. She was a caring mother. She was so good to her parents. He was such a wonderful person to talk with about anything. We hear all these wonderful things, and we can write pages and pages, and the eulogies have to be tailored and trimmed because they would otherwise run so very, very long. And then there are those houses into which we go, and when we ask, so tell me about your father, and the children kind of go, sometimes they have nothing to say. Or they'll tell me things and they'll say, but don't use that. They're being honest. He wasn't such a good father. He wasn't such a caring father. He wasn't really there for us as children. My mother really was not a good mother. My mother was not there for the children. My mother cared only for herself. She put herself before she put us. There have been times when I've walked out of a house and I have almost nothing on the piece of paper except the name of the deceased. And sometimes, to add a humorous note, the family, realizing I have nothing, will put their arms around me and say, I know we didn't tell you much, but you'll know what to say. Sometimes I don't know what to say. That's the permanent record. When we're gone, people look back and say, what kind of a person was he, was she? What will they say about me? What will they say about us? That's the permanent record. The permanent record that comes to our minds, or should, as we approach Yom Kippur. What kind of a permanent record am I writing? One of the major prayers of Yom Kippur is the Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi, and the Al Chet Shechatanu Lefanecha, all the 44 different things that we ask God's forgiveness for having done or not having done. And what are those 44 Al Chets? You ever looked at them closely? For the sin of what? Not the sin of not keeping kosher, not the sin of not keeping Shabbat. It's the sin for having spoken ill of other people. It's the sin of being cavalier with other people. It's the sin of being harsh with other people, being judgmental with other people. These are all personal flaws, all 44 of them, as well as the Ashamnu Bagadnu. What is it saying when we have this confessional 5 times? It's saying that we have a permanent record, but we can change it. We can still change it because we come before God on Yom Kippur and say, Dear God, we realize that what we have written so far is not exactly what we want you to see. It's not what we want our children to see, and no, it's not what we want our parents to see, it's not what we want our siblings to see, our grandchildren to see, because, dear God, we are flawed. We may not be the worst people who ever lived, but dear Lord, we know we're not the best. And we have an opportunity on Yom Kippur to let God know that we want to add a chapter to the permanent record that we have written with our lives up to and through this day. We can change, is the powerful message of Yom Kippur. That permanent record is only as permanent as the last edition, but there's always room for us to add an epilogue. And so as we stand before God and as we stand alongside our fellow human beings in the sanctuary on Yom Kippur, let us be mindful of the great challenge of Yom Kippur, to face up to the reality of who we are and what we have failed to be, that we could be better. But it's also the great opportunity to take that book, to take that record, to take that whole idea and to transform it into something that sings praises about ourselves, because we are prepared to make those changes that will make us praiseworthy. That is my prayer for all of us today. As Yom Kippur approaches, let us not just walk in, listen to the music and say, my gosh, I love the service. It's more than that. What are we going to write? What are we going to make of ourselves in the year to come? That we may be better husbands, wives, partners, lovers, friends, parents, siblings, and children, and truly be worthy of God's blessings and the blessings of all those we know and love. Shabbat Shalom.